Winnie Heatley, welcome to A-League Access.
Thank
Happy
you.
New
It's
Year.
lovely to be here. Happy New Year to you too.
There's been a few cases of COVID come up in the team this last week, and we just wanted to know how you're feeling and how the team's feeling, because I understand the game was cancelled last week. A lot of games were cancelled last weekend. So how's the team pulling up?
Yeah, it's definitely had an effect on the whole team. I myself had COVID and have just gone through the whole recovery stage of it. So that's been interesting. I've been pretty lucky in terms of bouncing back pretty quick. So today was my first day back at training actually, but no, the team's been really resilient throughout. We're just excited to all be back together, I think, and ready for the game this weekend.
Fantastic. Well, I really want to ask about your football journey so far. How did it all start for you, and who were your early influences, and who do you look up to or still look up to this day?
Yeah, well, if I go right back, I grew up in Port Douglas in Far North Queensland. So I played with boys teams all up there because, as you can imagine, there's not too much going on in terms of football. Moved to Brisbane when I was about 15 years old and played with the Raw Youth for a few years. And then obviously was able to play with the Raw Women for 2 seasons as well. So that was awesome, for 2 fully contracted seasons and 1 as a scholarship. Yeah, so that was really cool. And then from there, I guess I went over to Sweden for a short stint just at the middle part of last year, and then come back to, down to Melbourne. But yeah.
And who did you look up to growing up and as a footballer? Were there any people or any players that really inspired you to take up the game?
To be honest, I wasn't as lucky as a child in the sense that I had lots of football around me. I wasn't really able to watch it growing up, but I definitely idolized my 2 older brothers, which is the reason I started playing. But since I've been more around the football scene and been able to watch more games and everything, I'm definitely a big fan, and I'm so lucky I got to play with Claire Polkinghorne, who's definitely someone I look up to a lot. But yeah, and since I've been watching more women's football, I just get more and more idols.
Good. George?
Winnie, you've had a whirlwind start to your career so far. You debuted with Brisbane Roar in 2020. Then, as you mentioned earlier, you had that brief stint with Swedish side. Now, please pardon my pronunciation if I don't get this right, but a side called Vekova?
Vekla, yeah, that's pretty good.
Okay, thank you. So you had a brief stint with Vekova in 2021. Tell us about those experiences.
Yeah, for me, obviously going over to Sweden, it was my first time going abroad and living abroad. I'd been over for little short stints. But yeah, it was definitely a bit of a shock to the system. But it was also super important, however short it was, I feel like, for my growth as a person and as a player. It was awesome.
I mean, how did that transfer come about? I mean, you had that initial debut season. You were fantastic in that opening season in your career, and then you've jumped the security and comforts of home to try some completely different experiences in a completely foreign league.
Yeah. Well, for me, going overseas has been something that's been on my mind for a number of years. But it all really came about during the NPL season. I was playing in Sydney originally, and we went into that lockdown mid-year, and I was lucky enough in Sydney that I was training with the future Matildas and joining an NPL side there. So I was getting a lot of quality football in, but once we went into lockdown, my agent was kind of like, look, this is something that you can do. And so I just signed it and jumped on a plane, and it was awesome.
So how does the Swedish League compare with the Women's A-League?
Yeah, lots of people ask me that question, and it's really hard to kind of put my finger on it, but I think that probably the biggest difference is the physicality. I found just even in the training environment when I went over, they're a lot like rougher. You can get away with like bigger tackles kind of thing. And people aren't afraid to just smash you in training, and it's quite confronting when you first get there.
Winnie, now we are very lucky and happy that we have you back here in Australia, right? But when you went to Sweden, was it already back in your mind that you might come back half a year later, or what was the reason? I mean, unfortunately, your team was not so successful in the Swedish league. Were you a bit homesick as well? Did you think your chances to be called up to the Matildas would be greater here in Australia?
Well, when I first went over to Sweden, I initially signed a 2-year deal. Obviously, 1.5. Obviously, I had joined the team that was in the relegation spot. So knowing that my contract had a termination clause for if we did get relegated. But yeah, it would have been awesome to stay with the same club for a longer period of time while I was over there. Pretty much the decision to come back was I could have signed or tried to find a team over there and then come back for a holiday and then gone over when they start again, their pre-season starting around about now. But I just wanted to be playing football all the way through. And I mean, our season was pretty well aligned in that I could play their last game, come back with maybe 2 weeks training with City and then play a game here. So, I mean, it's just, I get to play more football, I guess. I do have plans to go back over.
And I mean, I was sitting with parts of your family when you had this fantastic 5-1 win in the derby against Melbourne Victory, the reigning champions. I mean, how was that feeling for you, having been away, even if it was only for half a year, but then your family can watch you again, although with COVID restrictions, I guess it was not as close as you was hoping for, right?
Yeah, no, it was so special, especially to see some of my immediate family there. Obviously, I have my extended family in Melbourne, but my dad and two of my younger siblings were able to come to that game and watch, and that was really special because it had been about a year since I had seen them. And yeah, they had grown a lot, and obviously, and it was just awesome to have them in the crowd.
Winnie, Melbourne City are second on the ladder behind Sydney FC. What can we expect from your team for the rest of the season?
Yeah, I'm pretty excited for the rest of our season. I think the last game was an indication of us really clicking and finally the pieces starting to come together. And I think that we're going to keep building from here, and I'm really excited.
Fantastic.
Winnie, let's talk a little bit more about your international career with the Matilda. So you were already called up by Tony Gustafsson end of the last year for the first time, although you didn't get play time, but that must have been an absolutely phenomenal experience with you. How was it with, for example, somebody like Sam Kerr to be in a camp?
Yeah, it was incredible. I'm pretty lucky that I did know a few of the faces in there and I got to play with them at Raw. But just to be surrounded by the quality of that team was pretty special, and it definitely gave me more of a hunger to get back into that environment. And I'll be doing everything I can to do that.
Now, speaking of the Asian Cup, Winnie is coming up for the Matildas. Australia face the Philippines, Indonesia and Thailand. Is the feeling within the camp that we can win this tournament and that should be our aim?
Well, yeah, for sure. I think that Tony is pretty excited. Obviously, he's been trying to get as many high quality international friendlies as he can with those camps recently. Obviously, I don't know too much about the upcoming Asian Cup, but I would definitely think that they would be pretty excited and definitely going there with the intention of winning.
Who do you think will be the toughest opponent? I know it's very early days yet, but just looking at things on paper, who do you think would be the main rival for the Matildas?
Yeah, I honestly don't know. I mean, throughout my youth international career, whenever we played the qualifiers in Asia, it was always so tough, and even teams that you didn't think were gonna be as good because either they had like less resources than us, like ended up being so good and such good quality. So I think that any team we're going to come up against is going to be a battle.
I think more money and resources are being thrown at a lot of clubs now. So you really can't gauge how you're going to go, can you? I mean, like you said, there are some clubs who you think this should be a clear win, but they surprise you, and you never know, do you?
Not at all.
So has Tony Gustafsson been in contact with you recently? Because to my knowledge, or the squad hasn't been announced yet, but do you have an hope that you could be in the squad, or where are you with that?
Obviously I can't say too much about that yet, but I do believe the
Okay.
team is getting announced later this week. So I guess I'll find out then. But yeah, I'll just be keeping training and playing games as I have been, and really trying to get into that environment. I know it's a tough competition. There's so much quality in Australia and outside of Australia with other Australian girls at the moment. So yeah, it's definitely a tough ask to get a spot in that team.
Winnie, where do you think your career will take you next? Is there a particular league you would like to play in?
Well, next, I definitely want to go back to Sweden. I got a taste of the league over there and I was really enjoying it, but I'm honestly open to anywhere in Europe. I've got a taste for European football and I've got the bug, so I really want to go back over there and play honestly anywhere in Europe.
Of course, Melbourne City would love to keep you for as long as possible. They're one of the powerhouses of the competition, so they'd be crazy not to try and hold you for as long as possible.
Yeah, well, at the moment, my plan is to stay for the rest of the season, and then hopefully get some opportunities in transfer windows that line up perfectly with the end of our season.
Right.
And last question, Winnie. I guess very honest, in the back of your mind, I can imagine the big goal for you is to be in the Matilda squad for next year, to have the World Cup on home soil. How exciting would that be? So is that for you the let's say midterm goal to be there next year in July, August?
Yeah, no, that's definitely been on my mind, but I think I can't get too far ahead of myself, as incredible as that would be. My main goal is to just improve and get better so that I do deserve to be in that squad.
Well, Winnie, it's
Fingers
been
crossed.
A pleasure talking to you. Yes, fingers crossed for the upcoming Asian Cup and definitely for the World Cup next year. We wish you all the best for the upcoming season, or the rest of the season with Melbourne City. I hope all the team is doing a lot better than last weekend, and we wish you well.
Thank you so much, and thank you for having me today.
No problem.
Thanks, Winnie.